Hello, welcome. Hi, everyone. Welcome, everyone. We're just re-admitting everyone. Welcome to all. We're re-admitting folks.
All right.
Welcome back, everyone. Still in the process of re-admitting folks, so we'll get started in a few minutes. Right. Just another moment. There's still one or two more people we're admitting.
Hello.
Okay. Yeah, if everyone who is on the line could mute yourself, that would be very appreciated. Okay, I think we're going to start now. So welcome back, everyone. For those that weren't on the line, we had we may have had some lines crossed, and so we were hearing some feedback that we couldn't stop. So we needed to have everyone sign back in again. So again, welcome to all. We are really, really glad to have you on this PISLAP call. Welcome to Dr. Param and to his many colleagues joining us from India. We appreciate, with the time difference, how late it is that you are joining us, and are very, very glad to have you. So the way that we begin our calls, and we'll probably have to do it relatively briefly, is to have everyone introduce themselves and give their name and where you are physically in time and space. So not really a personal description, but just, where you are, where you're situated right at this moment. We'll try to do that relatively quickly, but so we can get a feel for the group and feel present together. And then we will turn it over to Dr. Param to present to us, and then we will have an opportunity for dialogue. And before we jump into all that, Peter Gable, but once we do our introductions, Peter Gable will say a few words about PISLAP to those of you that are new to our work. Peter, would you like to lead us in the brief check-in and people situating themselves? We do have almost 50 people on the call, so we will need to have everyone speak fairly quickly.
Okay, well, I'll start, but first I may not be able to pronounce Indian names, so you'll have to forgive me for that. So I'm Peter Gable. I'm in San Francisco, California. I'm co-chair of this project for integrating spirituality, law, and politics. Bruce Peterson. Unmute yourself before you speak, please.
Sorry. I'm Bruce Peterson. I'm in my home office in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Foreigner, sir. This webinar.
Okay, I've now muted everyone. So when you speak, just if you could unmute yourself and then remute yourself when you've completed speaking. I'm also admitting more people to the call.
Sujata Patil, please.
Peter, I'm just thinking to myself, with the number of people that we have, you know, 54 people and continuing. I'm a little concerned about the time it may take with everyone to mute and unmute yourself. So perhaps we can do an introduction. Yeah, I think we should.
I agree with that. It's good.
Okay, we'll skip the introductions. Welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining from your many locations. Many of you from India. This is thrilling to have such a large group of you joining from India to hear Dr. Param speak today. So I'll just say by way of introduction that we are the project for integrating spirituality, law, and politics. And our vision is to help build a legal system and a legal culture that moves beyond the individualism and the way of thinking traditionally characteristic of law that sees us all as separated from one another, and that fosters links justice to the creation of a society based upon empathy, compassion, mutual recognition of one another's humanity. And this calls for a sort of a fundamental transformation of everyday legal practice, of the courtroom, of legislation, of what we are aspiring to as a society toward creating a legal system and a legal culture where we recognize that we are bound together, that we are bound to one another, and that law cases and the treatment of law generally seeks to foster this connection between us and more fully realize it in the world. So that's our objective as what we call PISLAP, the Project for Integrating Spirituality, Law, and Politics. And we're delighted we have an international group of lawyers, law professors, and law students who are becoming part of this new vision of what law can be. And we're very glad that this call is connecting with so many of you in India. And so that's by way of introduction of us. Nanette, would you like to introduce Dr. Param to speak to us today?
Yes, I would. So we want to welcome Dr. Param, who is a new member of PISLAP, but whose work very much resonates with values and the mission of our organization. We feel a kinship and connection with him and his work. And we're very honored and glad to have him on the call today, and thank him for also inviting his many colleagues from India to join us as well. So Dr. Param, I'm going to turn it over to you to present.
Thank you. Greetings to each and everyone present here. I'm very happy and indeed honored to be a part of this international group, PISLAP, which is slowly and gradually picking up in bringing the new future for legal community, legal knowledge, legal research. I thank Professor Peter Gabel, Madam Naneshwar, and Professor Bruce Peterson, and many other colleagues from PISLAP for facilitating me to join with all of you today. I'm also very happy to share this research that I have been doing for the last 5 years on spirituality in law and justice, theory and practice. In my 5 years of research that I have done so far, including the teaching, learning, researching, training, and so on, one fundamental point that I felt that we have to realize first is that spirituality, law, justice, society, and well-being are deeply interconnected and interrelational. This is the first and foremost fundamental point that I felt we must conceptually understand and experience in order to appreciate and bring this project to a fruitful manifestation. When I say spirituality, law, justice, society, and well-being as one interrelational and interconnected thing, we need to understand that we are advocating something new against the popular notion that spirituality is something different, law, justice, society, and well-being is something different. The popular conception is that these two are disconnected things. But we are starting this project from the idea that spirituality, law, justice, society, and well-being are deeply interconnected and deeply interrelational. This is the first and foremost point we need to keep in mind. Which brings us to the next point, that we know what is law, what is justice, what is society, what is well-being. We also know to some extent what is spirituality. But when we know these two different dimensions of knowledge, which apparently seems to be contradictory and disconnected, why then we are not able to integrate these two things together? This is exactly what I first tried to understand. I understood what is spirituality. I understand what is law, justice, society, and well-being. Why I am unable to connect these two things? It's precisely because there must be an integrating point of experience if spirituality, law, justice, society, and well-being, if all these five elements are going to be one single interrelational, deeply interconnected thing, there must be something which is underlying this, an integrated experience which must bring the connection to all these five elements. So this brings us the next point. What do we mean by the term spirituality? And what do we mean by spiritual experience? And why we need to connect spirituality and spiritual experience into law, justice, society, and well-being? To put it very simply, spirituality means an awakening into a greater reality. What is that awakening? It is an awakening from the existing mind, emotion, sense, and body, which we normally identify as our personality. From there, we are recognizing a different reality, a higher reality, a greater reality that is there inside us, above us, but not disconnected from us. But for the time being, it seems to be disconnected because we have not yet experienced that in our current nature, in our current reality. So spirituality means an awakening in the current reality of our mind, emotion, sense, and body to that greater reality, that higher reality. Or you can even call it as the true reality of all of us, which is there hidden inside us. You may call it God, you may call it divine, you may call it soul, you may call it self, you may call it psychic. Whatever be the terminology and name that you want to give, you can give. But the most important point we need to keep in mind is that there is a greater reality which is part of us, but is not yet experienced now. So when we say spiritual experience or spirituality means, it is nothing but this current reality of the current mind, current emotion, current sense, and the current body getting awakened to a greater mind, greater emotion, greater sense, and greater body, as a result of which we get to see this individuality is not so individual that we think. It is much more. Even what the law and the legal system want us to achieve, want us to be aware and conscious and realize, is that we need to go beyond the individual through empathy, love, through compassion, mutuality. But how do we get all that? Our current reality doesn't give that experience. That is why I say, when we say spirituality means, it defines to a greater awakening, a greater reality, higher reality, God, divine, whatever be the name and terminology we want to have it. But there must be a greater experience which is other than this current mind, emotion, sense, and body, but it is also going to influence this current mind, emotion, sense, and body. Which means the moment spiritual awakening has taken place, what will happen is that there will be a new awareness that will impact our mind, emotion, sense, and body. So the same current reality, which is very limited mind, limited emotion, limited sense, and limited body, gets an expansive mind, gets an expansive emotion, gets an expansive sense and an expansive physical consciousness and body to accommodate all. So spirituality gives that experience and it connects us to the existing reality. It is not making us go away from life. It is actually bringing the connection, which means spirituality not only gives the awakening, but also brings the awareness back into our current reality, as a result of which it connects the existing reality with that of the greater reality. We are not going to go away from any one of these. We are going to merge slowly these two things. Now, the next question that comes to us is, what happens when we get this awareness of the greater reality? What is that awareness all about? That awareness is nothing but it gives the sense of unity. It gives the sense of unified consciousness. It gives the sense of unifying consciousness. 2, it gives the sense of eternity, no longer limited by time and space. And finally, it gives the sense of there is a consciousness which is continuously evolving, continuously progressing, continuously perfecting. So by spirituality, we get an awakening to that greater reality. As a result of that greater reality, we get an awareness of this unity, unifying and unified consciousness, eternity, as well as the flow of continuous consciousness, which is going to enter our same mind in which we did not realize this first, before this awakening had taken place. The same spiritual awakening brings this awareness of the greater reality into the mind, into the emotion, into the sense, and into the body. Not only the awareness, but also opening up the mind to have the sense of unity and oneness. Opening up the emotion to have the sense of love and empathy and mutuality. Opening up the sensory skills to have multidimensionality in accepting things, diversity and liberty and so on. And opening up in the body a kind of a joyful liveliness which can hold all these things. So spirituality brings the awakening, spirituality gives the awareness, and this awareness brings the impact. And as a result of this impact, we start getting a new manifestation of our own form. There is a radical change to our own personality, which was not there before. So there are 3 things which are here. One is the ordinary current existing reality, which when it gets opened up, it gets the higher reality, the greater reality, and the flow of the awareness from there, as a result of which the individual gets transformed, a kind of a new personality comes, and the same individual is going to relate with the society. So the individual, the social, and the spiritual. Individual is in the middle. So when the individual gets an awakening to that spiritual reality, he gets an awareness from above and gets the unity consciousness, unified consciousness, unifying consciousness, a sense of eternity, timelessness, spacelessness, and boundlessness, and limitlessness, and the flow of consciousness to understand what is happening between thought and contact, between cause and effect, and so on. As a result of which, our individual behavior, our individual personality changes, which means spirituality can bring impact into our intra-personality, mind, emotion, sense, and body, because it has the huge impact from behind. It also brings impact into the interpersonality of the individual with that of the society, with that of the collective. As a result of it, all the behavior, all the conduct, all the thoughts, all the expressions that we have, it automatically brings empathy, it automatically brings love, it automatically brings unity. This is exactly what law wants. If you see why we need to introduce this in law and legal system, the current legal system which talks about justice, it is always justice seeking after the injustice takes place, after an injury takes place. But with spirituality, we will not be creating any injustice or injury, because the person, the individual who is having the connection with the greater reality, and in his own reality of the mind, emotion, sense, and the body, with that of the greater mind, greater emotion, greater sense, and greater body, and when he relates, the sense of oneness, the sense of unity, the sense of empathy, the feeling of shared values, mutuality, compassion, all these are natural outflow of his personality, as a result of which everything that we do creates not only justice but well-being in the society. This is exactly what we need to understand. The current justice mechanism is largely distributive justice, the social and the economic. Then you have the procedural justice, which is largely about legalization process. Then you have the retributive or punitive justice, which punishes the offender for the offenses he has committed. And you have the evolving restorative or rehabilitative justice, in which some new openings are tried and tested. But if we introduce spirituality into that, we can not only use the distributive justice, procedural justice, punitive justice, rehabilitative and restorative justice, we can even prevent injustice. We can even prevent injuries that are taking place. Which means when we introduce spirituality into law and justice society, we will be promoting justice. Like how they say distributive justice, we can bring a new concept of promoting justice or preventing injustice. It is perfectly possible. So how do we do that? There are two ways of doing it. One is to bring this in the education and teach this, which is exactly what I am doing in the country, in my country, India, Gujarat National Law University, where we introduced a full course on spirituality in law and justice and so on. We bring this integration. As a result of which we tend to discuss these. What is this higher consciousness? When does the impact takes place? If the impact takes place only in the emotion or only in the mind, only in the body, what are all the various developments that takes place? If it is not happening, what will be the result? All those things, various things we discuss. As a result of which, our legal education promotes something of a future justice in which well-being is the justice, in which promotion of justice and prevention of injustice and injury is paramount. But if you see, the legal system also, the judicial system also, is more or less incorporating these spiritual values, but unconsciously and indirectly. I can give you two interesting examples. One is in the Indian Penal Code. Recently, we decriminalized a provision in which an attempt to commit suicide, that person should not be criminalized and that person should not be considered as an offender and he should not be punished. Because the person who is committing suicide, he is in a serious trauma, he is in a serious difficulty, he is in a self-loss, he is having serious problem with his self-identity and so on. So if he commits suicide and his attempts fail, what should we do? Under the Mental Health Care Act, our Indian legislation and judicial interpretations have forced the state to give good treatment to him, to counsel him and consult him and give the well-being to him. This is exactly spirituality in the form of state legislative policy formulation making and executive implementation. Similarly, in the same sexuality case, 377 of the Indian Penal Code, we decriminalized that particular provision, saying that simply because a particular person is having a different orientation to sexuality doesn't mean that he can be discriminated in public. You should have love and empathy and fraternity, as a result of which that particular person is no more considered as an offender. So we get to see here, spirituality is being applied, but that takes a trial and error experimentation of so many decades. For example, right to equality or right to liberty is one and the same in the last 70 years of the Indian Constitution or even in the US Constitution. The provision is same, but the interpretation of it and the justice which is being brought out of that provision is continuously changing and evolving because of the changes in the society, changes in the human consciousness, which is a very slow trial and error experimentation approach. If we consciously engineer this particular process, program this particular process of spirituality into the mind of the students, into the offenders and the victims, into the judicial system, into the legal policy framework and making, what we can achieve in 50 years can be achieved in 5 years, as a result of which we can even minimize the injustice. We can even minimize the injuries in the meanwhile. This is the work that I'm doing in India by not only teaching this as a full course, but also doing the training, but also doing various other research work. I would like to end with something very interesting, which is my own personal story. Many times people had asked me, how did I come to this? It's very simple. I come from a family of lawyers. I'm a fourth generation lawyer. My father was a great civil lawyer and my grandfather was a great defense counsel, and so on. So throughout my childhood and my college days, I have seen only clients coming to our house and constantly, talking about justice and their pang and agony and so on. So I realized that law has a direct connection with society. Law has something very close with the society, in which if we change the interpretation of the law, or bring a new interpretation, or bring a new meaning into the law, or create a new meaning into the law, society can very easily change. Society can very easily get the benefit. This was one incident which provoked me to think in this direction. Second was, my father and grandfather and others, they were all deeply into spiritual traditions. They brought a lot of spiritual masters, realized masters from various religions, be it Christianity, Islam, or self-realized masters, Buddhism, Jainism, and so on. So when they come, the same section of the society, they also used to come. And I have observed all the people who have come to my father and grandfather as clients, when they come to our house to seek solace and peace, they find a sense of peace, they find a sense of self-fulfillment. Which means I realize there is a connection between spirituality and there is a connection between law. So I used to observe, what is it that they have got when they meet a realized master, when they meet a realized spiritual person. I have observed in their presence, there used to be a great peace which will be flowing. There will be a great silence that will be flowing. And then it will slowly enter the environment, the atmosphere, the consciousness, in which slowly everyone gets opened up to that in their thinking, in their emotions, in their feelings. And slowly they think differently and they feel fully satisfied and they go. That's exactly where I realized spirituality can be used as a very powerful tool to aid social justice, to aid the well-being in the society, and it can be used in the legal policy and judicial interpretations. Can I still, how much time I have, Naren? Your mic is mute.
Oh, my apologies. I said,
Yeah.
well, we take a few more minutes if you need it, but then we would like to open it up for dialogue with you.
Yeah, I would like to explain if it is fine, because the last time we discussed this, that how does this spiritual experience takes place? That is one of the questions which I very often face in the training programs and so on. It's a very simple process that wherever that you are, whatever that you are doing, sit in the place in a very relaxed manner. You can close your eyes, you can open your eyes, whatever be it, and just only concentrate and give yourself to that body of that great peace, that great zone of silence. Just observe the stillness and give yourself to that. Self-open yourself to that. As a result of which, you can feel the peace coming in. Because it is a truth. It is a reality of its own. Many times people ask how it is a reality till I experience. Yes, you experience, it becomes a reality. Sometimes people ask, is it subjective? Yes, it is subjective for you. But if everyone starts experiencing it, it is no more subjective, it is objective. So to sit quietly with a mind, without any thought, having only single focus, that the mind should be open to that great reality that is bringing the peace, that is bringing the silence, that is bringing the oneness consciousness, that is bringing the unified presence, unifying consciousness, which is a very concrete, dense power. Like how we have analytical reasoning and logic as a power. Similarly, this unified consciousness and unifying consciousness is also a power that can be invoked. And the moment you self-open yourself to that, it enters. Once it enters your mind space. It enters your emotional space. It enters your life energy and the body. And you will feel a new personality of your own. You will feel a radical change. The quality and the substance with which you see things in the surroundings, the way you look at people, the words that come out, the expressions that you have with your emotions, the reactions that come from the senses and the body which holds, there will be a wholesome light to it, a sweetness to it, an experience to it. If you have that, we can move ahead with that in that direction. That is the starting point of the true well-being which we all had, which we must bring and adopt in our daily lifestyle. So I stop here. If there is any question that I can take up.
Please, so the floor is open for Dr. Param to questions or response. And feel free to also use the chat room if that's more comfortable, and we can make sure to read the questions aloud if Dr. Param hasn't seen it.
So,
May I comment on it? May I comment, Nanette?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, I'm Peter Gable. I'm in San Francisco. Thank you so much, Dr. Param, for that open-hearted presentation about our deep spiritual essence and presence. If I could say the challenge or difficulty that I as an American lawyer and law professor, experience in relationship to what you are calling for. When you come to a law school in America, in your first day of class, immediately people are talking to each other through the lens of logic, analysis, and separation. The entire environment is, well, it seems to me that you could argue that the such and such is not really present because this wasn't there and that wasn't there, and therefore this isn't the case of so-and-so. With glassy eyes, no one is connecting with anyone, everyone is arguing from the head. And within that framework of analysis and separation and argument, the capacity to release what you're saying is at our essence, which is the flow of interconnectedness, of oneness, of mutuality, of unity, is very, very difficult for anyone who is isolated in that context. And therefore, what we need to figure out, if that's the right word, what we need to birth is how to release that flow into the discussion of our cases, into the discussion of the everyday life of our world, so that we can confirm in one another that that spiritual truth, that spiritual longing is actually present in all of us. We have to release something that, as you say, is there, but yet not visible if it's separated out and treated as something discrete. So I think as teachers, as lawyers who are in legal settings, the challenge for us is to how to make ourselves present in this way that then can confirm that in others so that they can begin to relax in the body, open the heart, make ourselves present to each other here, even through a Zoom screen, so that we can realize, no, we're not all separate boxes. We are all one commonality aspiring to the same wholeness. And maybe I'll just say that's one of our objectives in PISLAP, is how do we bring that into, we have a judge here, how does he bring it into the courtroom, Judge Peterson. We have a number of teachers here who may start their classes with a quiet moment, a moment of recovery of being, so that before you even talk about a case, you can be introducing into the environment that open-heartedness of feeling and that spiritual flow that you eloquently spoke to. And of course, if anyone else has anything to contribute to that right now or to help us, how we can do that in legal settings, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Can I take a minute to answer this? Just
Sure. Dr.
yes, please. No, somebody was, yeah. At the initial level, what happens in my experience is that even when we go to the class or to any setting, any place other than the place in which we are comfortable with that presence, when we go there, that presence is there and it is continuing. There are two types of difficulties which we have to surmount. One is each and every individual has to do it, and then when they come together, to have a collective expression of it is possible only when each and every individual is doing some kind of an experiment, some kind of an experiencing of these things in their individual space and then coming there. My observation is that I used to do this in certain training programs and other spaces. The initial first few hours, there used to be certain difficulty, but I know that the presence is there. It is there guiding, but it will slowly enter. So I used to create small groups, clusters, who are like-minded in those things, and create those energies network forming there, and then it keeps forming there, and then slowly it emerges. It takes time. I fully agree with that. But the key, the crucial secret is to allow that process to take place, and it does take time, and then it does open up at one point of time. How fast and how sure it is dependent on the presence with which we go to that class and find a few individuals there who are souls who are catching it, and then make them as points there, and then light from there, and then it immediately picks up. Is my personal experience, and I can also confidently say I have been fairly successful in that. Though there are some amounts of people who will still be stuck in their own logic and reasoning, perfectly fine for me. I have no problem with that. But large amount of people come into it to the extent that the course which was started 5 years back, it has now picked up. Throughout India, it is going on. In the last lockdown period of 3 months, I did close to some 21 webinars on this to different universities. I find these are all the stepping stones, small baby steps which we need to make. Pioneers, they always have this difficulty of establishing things. I am ready to accept that and do it. Anybody else?
Dr. Param, there was a question in the chat room that I'd like to read aloud. The question from Milan Patre is, I'm sorry if I mispronounced, good health means well-being, but we always are so obsessed with well-doing. How to make this transition from well-doing, from action, I assume, to well-being, to inner spiritual well-being. So if I understood the question correctly, that's what it was.
Yes. This particular between well-doing and well-being. Well-being comes first. Only from well-being, the well-doing can come. It is not that we can do things error-free in the first instance itself. Only when we have the contact within ourselves, with that greater consciousness, and establish in our mind, emotion, sense, and body, and integrate the individual personality to a great level, to a sufficient level, only then from our thoughts and emotions and from our hands and actions, anything that goes out will have what is called not only well-being, but also a well-doing. So we have to practice this. We should not be worried about while doing a particular thing, whether we have the well-being or not. It is simultaneous process. We should not lose our heart in between. We develop a little bit of inner contact and bring it into the action. And we develop a deeper contact. We again bring it into the action. So it is a back and forth process of getting the contact and then bringing it back. If we keep on doing this shuttling between the external personality and the inner personality and the greater personality, slowly the link gets formed and slowly the link becomes very live. And everything that flows from our hand, from our mouth, from our eyes, from our body becomes the both well-being as well as well done.
This is Lyle Baker. I have a question, if I can.
Yes.
I'm a law professor in Massachusetts. Spirituality, in at least the Western experience, has always been what we used to call a collect call. You know, you couldn't necessarily dial it in like you would a radio station. It's so I guess the question is, in teaching this subject, is your exercises or your practices available to us to look at, your syllabus, things like that might give us guidance?
Yeah, I have my own syllabus and I have my own training material. I would like to share it with the PISLAP community, which you can take it from them. I can share it with you.
Dr. Param?
Yes.
This is Pooja Sinha. I'm a peace faculty at MIT World Peace University, Pune, and I'm also a heartfulness meditation trainer. I just wanted to, since the concept of PISLAP is really very exciting, because we are also in the same of offering spirituality to everyone across the globe. Just wanted to take 2 minutes to introduce what is heartfulness, and if there is a possibility of partnering with you and with the organization so that it can be offered to people across the globe. So we are a non-profit organization across 160 countries, and very simple techniques of heartfulness and raising your consciousness of human beings is offered to everyone above 15 years of age. And this is by a special, you can say, the unique feature of heartfulness is the yogic transmission of pranahuti, which was there in the yoga in the ancient times, and it helps one to evolve into the best level or version of the human being which we are here. And if we partner with you for this cause, I think since we do not charge for any of our services, and our courses are also offered in across universities to colleges to villages and so on and so forth. So every individual for that matter. So what I would like to propose to you is that if we could partner with you and see how we can take it to the next level if we do this together.
Kindly write to me. I will share the mail with Professor Peter Gabel and the PISLAP community. They will be able to guide us how to take it ahead. Thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Would someone else like to either bring their own experience in or share a reflection?
This is Ann Friedman, and I'm a PISLAP member here in the East Coast of the United States and a law teacher. And I wanted to thank you for a powerful message that I always need, and I think PISLAP as a whole needs, which is that the ability to have patience, to trust that as our presence strengthens and as our connections with each other strengthen and as we continue on the path, because I think we get in this country in particular, I think we get caught up with the idea of speed and of results. And I think that that takes us away from staying in our own space. And there's a process that I find that I have to do, which is attend to my own reactivity to current events, which in the United States right now and in the world are really powerful. And that if I am willing to know where my upset is coming from and bring it back into the peacefulness and the unity that you're speaking of, then I can reground myself and then I can figure out what the next step is. But sometimes I think we get very reactive and we try then, we don't realize what a limited mindset we're cast into. And then we try to think our way or talk our way or act our way instead of adhering to our basic principles. So your message about the process is very clear and is really helping me reground myself. And so I thank you very much for that. And I think as a law teacher and changing law, that we have to have trust that our presence can be contagious.
Yes.
And I think we lose sight of that when the going seems hard and we feel isolated.
Absolutely.
Dr. Param, we have another question in the chat room from Kirsten.
I think Professor Bruce is speaking.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Yeah.
Please.
Doctor, I was thinking about Peter's point about lawyers tend to talk objectively. I think there are other barriers to the awakening to a greater reality that you've spoken of. In this country, I would say they are political anger and resentment, which I think has been a large force in producing our current president. I think ideological zealotry, which I think you see in India. I think woundedness. I have, in my work as a judge, encountered many, many people who have had traumatic experiences, abusive experiences, injustice in their lives, and their woundedness I'm wondering if you can give us any advice for our own selves who are wounded and angry, and others who are experiencing these barriers to opening themselves up to a greater consciousness.
There is one method which I have observed is what Anne Friedman told, that trusting that presence that we have, being certain about this greater consciousness, which is what is holding all of us and bringing that. So there are some moments in which a person who is hurt or feeling the injury or injustice is unable to cross that zone in order to realize this sense of peace and this sense of zero stress situation. Best is to have as much compassion as much as possible in terms of a social help or a psychological counseling, and above all, when we interact with those people who are key players of those kind of things, with that sense of consciousness, with that sense of certitude that it is going to work. There should not be any doubt, even for a second, that this consciousness doesn't work. It does work. This presence is so healing. It is so fulfilling that even if pain is there, one is able to transcend the pain. So to bring that experience to other, to take this experience inside us and then implanting it to somebody is a difficult call, unless and until we have the continuity of our experience with that zone and the higher contact. And we should also have the capability to transfer that experience to somebody else. That is a different skill in doing it. Like how doctors or lawyers, they handle the clients in a different way, no matter the client is in a great agony or a pain. So he is able to see it objectively. In the same way, a person who has this spiritual consciousness, if he can have the tool of transferring it, that transferring it is nothing but bringing your individual spirituality into a collective space. That is a different skill which we needed to develop. That is also part and parcel of it. That is one of the key challenges that I am facing here. As far as teaching this particular subject in Law University is concerned, students are coming and we are teaching it. As far as the experience is concerned, like how Professor Peter Gabel has said, those who are committed to that, those whose souls are open, they are understanding it and they are taking it. But to those who have not yet experienced, it takes so much time for us to bring them close to that contact and make them open to it. But my hope and my experience is that this work, which is a true work of the truth consciousness, it never fails. And this is the right time right now, the post-COVID case. People are in need of self-healing. People are in need of self-opening. If we speak this language itself is so self-assuring, so certain for all of us. That's how I see it. I don't know whether I have answered.
Doctor, not only have you answered my question, but you've made me feel very appreciative of what you said and
Okay.
the value of faith. So thank you very much. That's very
okay.
Did someone else have a question? We do have one or two in the chat room, but I'll just see if anybody wanted to speak first. All right. Two questions in the chat. One is, during these times, from Kirsten D, lawyers/advocates who have made a career of doing for others are now struggling with their own concerns, health, safety, and justice. This change of focus seems to be causing inner conflict. Do you have suggestions for reconciling these thoughts? And I'll add the second one as well, and you can just, a different thought. Is being egoistic an awakening to one's self-consciousness to bring about the feeling of oneself in power, or in a dominant role?
Is being egoistic an awakening to one's self-consciousness? Certainly not. When we are conscious of our own reality of mind and emotion, sense and body, we are conscious of our current reality. That is not spirituality. Spirituality is to bring the greater consciousness, bring that higher consciousness and bring that awareness and make an impact into it. The moment you bring an impact into your mind, emotion, sense, and body in the current reality, you feel that the ego is completely thin and disappeared. You no longer have the individuality. Though you will be individual in acting, but the individualistic, narrow, dogmatic ideas won't be there. So to be aware of one's own self is not conscious. To be aware of one's own higher self is what is conscious, what is spiritually consciousness is all about. We have to be connecting to that greater zone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have one more comment, Nanette.
Go ahead, Peter.
Which is this, Dr. There you are. And a supplement to what you are saying. And one of the reasons that we have politics in our name as well as spirituality is that we are each not only, I think, the presence that you describe, but we are present to others as an other also. And therefore we can make our presence manifest in a way that can ricochet among a group. I transmit it to you. If I do, you feel more confident that it is real. And then when you turn to the person next to you, you also become an embodiment of that carries the radiant energy of our presence into a circuit in the community or group that can become an active force for social and political change, so that we can change the environment as well as the person. When that environment begins to change, the capacity for opening up increases exponentially. It begins to ricochet. And when that ricochet fully happens, I think we get the most beautiful aspects of social movements, social justice movements, where the heart begins to be felt beating in each other as we pass this capacity for presence on to the other. So we can practice doing that day to day. Breathing, before we speak, when we enter into conversation, when we make a point in a group, trying to extend the whole of ourselves rather than only the contribution of the mind into the group's rotation of energy. It's sort of translating spirituality into political action when we can do that.
Yes.
I think.
Thank you, Peter. Looks like I don't see anyone else's hand raised for a final question. Oh, was there someone? Yes, Anne?
Other question in the chat that you shared with Dr. Param didn't get answered. And that was the question of lawyers who have been doing social justice work and are struggling now because they feel so much under threat, and they are shifting their focus to their own safety and well-being, and experiencing a conflict, a difficulty continuing the broader work while they deal with their own personal stress. And I thought that Dr. Param might be able to address that.
Thank you, Anne. Yes.
Yeah, there are two things. There are two things in this. One is the spirituality and its impact in the personality, what I call it as the intra-personality transformation. Second is, as a result of the intra-personality transformation, one can take it ahead to the next level, which is interpersonality transformation. The difficulties that we normally face is the interpersonality transformation, which is very difficult, because the moment we sit in our house, the moment we are in our own work, the moment we get a contact to it, the moment we feel the assurance of that great presence coming inside us and bringing us the sense of limitlessness, all these are great inside our house, inside our boundaries. The moment we step out of our house, when we enter into it, there the consciousness of the environment or the circumvent consciousness, which is not yet open to it, we feel a resistance to it. We should also start to practice slowly this interpersonality movement, like while going for a walk, or while doing an exercise, or while talking to somebody, we should consciously step back for a moment. It takes just a few seconds to step back for a moment. Just feel that it is coming inside us. And while talking also, while looking at a person, while actively handling certain things, we should also feel and see that it is entering into the zone in which our work is done. Now, the problem or the challenge that you have posed, where the social justice issues are coming, where political powers are involved, where they fear the threat of safety and security and well-being of their own individuality and so on. It looks like that at the current moment, it is a difficult call to immediately reach to that level. So better would be to start at the intra-personality level and slowly develop the interpersonality within our own community, like how we have created this PISLAP community and we are slowly expanding. And then slowly it may have its own impact in the political space. It may have impact in the even a space which is normally considered to be completely chaotic. So what we normally think is this spirituality is so enchanting. It is so self-assuring. So as a result of which we immediately want this experience to everybody. That is also a part of spirituality. That good feeling that we have, that empathy that we have. Wow, it is such a great experience that we have. As a result of which we don't tend to harm anybody. We don't even think to harm anybody. Why others are thinking like this? We need to understand it takes a lot of time for them to evolve slowly. But we should also consciously aid and propel their personal transformation from coming from their lower zone to the higher zone. So we have to develop first the stages of this spirituality, such the intrapersonality, then interpersonality within our own community and our own professional workspaces, then slowly expanding and extending it and experimenting it even to places which are not even receptive or open to that. It takes little time, but we have no other go. If we are interested in building a community which is full of well-being, we need to do this, and that's how the work is done. It's good that we are identifying where our threats are, but we have to do the work.
Thank you, Dr. Param. We have one more question, which maybe we'll have that as our last question before we have a little closing for the call. And here's the question from Kavita Goran. Dr. Param, what according to you should be the one starting point of discussion with the students of law, politics, to help them step into spirituality and then using this as a foundation in their careers? Thank you.
Yeah. If you ask, especially with the law students or students of polity and sociology and so on, if you ask them what are the famous words or popular words that are being discussed in the social collectivity, they bring the word inclusivity, they bring the word sustainability, they bring the word equity. But how do we achieve all these things? These words which are inclusivity, sustainability, equity, which are words which are very comfortable in our mind right now, that we all want this. The origin of all these are there in the spiritual experience. So we can start from where these people, where students of any discipline that they have, be it law, sociology, politics, and so on, people always talk about how to have this individual collective coexistence peacefully, that everybody wants, irrespective of any subject, any discipline and knowledge. We all want how an individual should be in relation to the society. That interconnection, that interrelation with the society is basically a sense of unity, sense of empathy, sense of collectivity, sense of inclusivity, equality and equity and so on. So if they can identify any student from politics or sociology, whatever be the subject, what are the core values and principal ideals of your subject, you can find spirituality in that. Take any subject, be it management, science, technology, economics, sociology, psychology. The core value, the core highest ideal of that is nothing but a spiritual principle which is there. We use the word spirituality. Otherwise, we all are living in this planet with one common spirit being shared, but we don't know what we are sharing. We have to become conscious of it. So if we take this particular methodology, it is very easy to connect with.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Peter, did you want to say any few words to close the call? All right. So just want to thank Dr. Param for a wonderful presentation and dialogue, for bringing his vision of the integration of spirituality and justice and well-being into our awareness, to feel the dialogue as it's emerged through the questions, through the chat room, and the challenge that we all face. Much appreciation to the many who have joined us from India. We invite you to come to other PISLAP calls if you can in the future. I know it's a little challenging with the time change. We are trying to incorporate people all the way from West Coast of the United States through India. So we appreciate your being here and all of the work that you are doing to integrate spirituality into the law, into social justice, and to help bring about a better world. So we wish everyone health and well-being in these difficult times. If you'd like to be on a future call, please feel free to sign up on our website for notices, or you can drop me a line at contactpislap@gmail.com. So many thanks and all the best.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you. I put
Thank
our
you.
website once again on the chat line, so please do go to our website and join us. Let's make it a worldwide movement to bring into being what we're talking about today, and at least see what we're doing. So come to the website when you can. Thank you so much.
Can
Wonderful.
we all
you.
just,
Bye.
can we all just wave at each other so we can see each other on our screens?
Yes. Beautiful.
Thank you, Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.